Watch collectors love to talk about tool watches. It's a real tool watch. It's got tool watch origins. You're a tool for watching. And I'm endlessly entertained by what some people call tool watches. The Rolex Deep Sea? The Breitling Navitimer? Come on, seriously? Because while it's true that many popular watches started out as functional timekeeping tools, their primary modern function is to tell people how much money you're willing to spend on a piece of jewelry that needs to be oiled every few years. But there are still watches, mechanical watches even, that either still serve a noble purpose or are at least still aligned with that original purpose. And I think the watches from Marathon are great examples. These are two Marathon GSAR watches. These watches are on loan from teddybaldessar.com. Authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick, fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, full factory warranty on all products that they offer. They didn't ask me to say any of that, nor did they know that I actually bought a Marathon watch from teddybaldessar.com last year. My Marathon Navigator came from Teddy B. They had the best price at the time, and I have only good things to say about the service. So when they asked me if I wanted to borrow anything for a video, the second thing that came to mind was Marathon. The first thing that came to mind was, what makes you think you can trust me? Which was also part of my wedding vows. I like Marathon watches, and I like Marathon the company. Marathon is based in Canada, America's hat, and all its watches are made in Switzerland. It was founded in 1904 by the same family that now runs it. The first name was Weinstrom Watch, and then it became Wine Brothers, and then in 1939 Marathon Watch was its official name. Just 2 years later, in 1941, Marathon began producing timing instruments for Allied forces. And even decades later, many Marathon watches were designed for or with the military, like the Navigator that I wear and love. This was developed in partnership with Kelly Air Force Base in 1986, an affordable, durable, legible, and accurate watch. And these watches, the GSAR watches, were designed to meet the Canadian government's requirement for SAR operations, that's search and rescue. GSAR means government search and rescue. Today, I assume that most of the searching and rescuing done by people wearing these watches is searching for deals at Costco or rescuing the remote from between the couch cushions. And that's not the fault of the watches. These are capable of much more, even if the people wearing them are not. Okay, me. I'm not capable. I'm sure you're all very brave and very strong. The two watches share most of the same specs. They are 41mm across, 48mm long, and 14mm thick. They both have 20mm lug spacings and both have drilled lugs, and they're water resistant to 300 meters. This white dial watch is called the Arctic, and this one with the black case is called the Anthracite. Either watch can be bought on a bracelet or a strap. On a bracelet, these 41mm GSAR watches weigh about 175 grams. Buying them from Teddy B, as of today, the Arctic on a strap is $13.50, and on a bracelet it's $14.40. The Anthracite is more. On a strap it's $16.20, and on a bracelet it's $19.80. The price difference is due to the treatment of the steel, which gives the watch this matte black look. The blackification of the steel is done through ion plating. That's a type of PVD, physical vapor deposition. Basically, through vapor and electrical currents and general relativity, the black coating is deposited onto the steel, and it's really on there. The ion plating not only makes this watch very black, but also very scratch resistant. Now, I'm not saying that I tried to scratch the inside of one of the bracelet links with a sharp metal object, but if I had, you wouldn't be able to tell, but I'm not saying that I did, or that I didn't. This Anthracite watch is the only GSAR to use a butterfly clasp on the bracelet. All other GSAR bracelets look like they use a more standard flip-lock fold-over clasp. Pros and cons to the butterfly. Pro, it's thinner than the flip-lock clasps, more elegant too, and I think that's in line with the kind of special edition-ness of this watch. Con, there are no micro-adjustment holes like on the standard clasp. That means that you don't have quite as many or as easy resize options with the Anthracite bracelet. But this bracelet does have half links, and I've been able to get a good fit on my 7-inch wrist. 7-inch wrist. 7-inch wrist. On the bracelet, the GSAR has some real heft. Certainly these watches are more comfortable on the straps, but I really like the feel of a slightly heavy watch as long as the weight feels balanced, and this one does. Some people just like that wrist presence, and most days I'm one of those people, depending on sleep and diet. And I think these watches look perfect on my 18cm wrist. But if you think 41mm by 14mm isn't going to work for you, I've got great news. There are 36mm marathon GSAR watches. They are still mechanical. They also come with bracelet and strap options, and they're 1mm thinner at 13mm. But I actually think that these 41mm watches wear slightly smaller than 41mm. And I think that's partially due to the lug width at 20mm. There are 41mm watches that have 22mm lugs, 21mm lugs, and 20mm lugs. This one at 20, there's just less surface area to the bracelet. And that small difference does have an effect on looks, and I like it. But even with the relatively narrower bracelet, these are not dainty watches. The GSAR watches are intentionally chunky and industrial and can't really be bothered to be elegant. If you like the look of the bezel, the large knurled crown, and the dial, you'll have no problem with the 14mm thickness of this watch. And if you don't like the looks, don't even consider yourself with the thickness, just move on with your life. Because the dimensions and the design, I think it's all very congruent. It's all harmonious. It's almost brutalist, and it's not for everyone. Many of the best things in life aren't for everyone. Inside these watches are Sellita SW200 movements. Good, fine, perfect. For these watches at these prices, this seems right. The only possible improvement would be using a quartz movement. Because despite all the pearl clutching that collectors do about battery-powered movements, they make a lot of sense in tool watches. The bezel has 120 clicks, 120 very sturdy, loud clicks. And this bezel design, it's so tall with such big grips. This is the easiest turning bezel I can remember playing with. I imagine using this with diving gloves would not be a problem. Omega, are you listening? I have not been able to figure out what these bezel inserts are made of. Could be ceramic, could be PVD steel. It doesn't seem like aluminium, the thing beer cans are made of. But I do know that the lume pip at 12 o'clock is made of Marathon's own Mariglow material. Now that's in contrast to the dial markers and hands. Those use tritium gas tubes. These tubes are filled with radioactive tritium that glows as it decays. That's why there's a radioactive symbol on the dial. That also means that the lume does not need to be charged up. It's always glowing. Always for about 20 years at least. It's kinda cool that it stays a constant brightness for years and years. Much longer than I'll be bright, if I ever was to begin with. The date at 4:30 is another sign that this watch isn't for picky, fancy folk. The date is where it is because 1, you need a date on a watch, and 2, this location doesn't obstruct any markers or any numerals. And I admire that. I admire the whole vibe of these watches. They're so functional, so intentionally useful that I find them beautiful, which is probably the last thing they were designed to be. But I really do think good engineering and good user experience design is beautiful, even if it's far from fine art. Are these real tool watches? Kind of, no. Compared with a resin G-Shock, probably not. But I guess that really depends on how you use them. And these watches, I do believe that you could use them as part of your search and rescue mission, whether it's to get hikers off of a mountain or sailors back safely to shore, or dark chocolate peanut butter cups from that hard-to-reach shelf. Thank you for your service.